Amina walked slowly through the quiet office building, holding her mop and bucket. It was late at night, and most of the employees had already gone home. The long glass windows reflected the city lights, and the only sound was the gentle hum of machines. She was the janitor, the one people rarely noticed, but she knew every corner of this building better than anyone else. Every night, after putting her son Omar to bed at their small apartment, she came here. She wore her uniform, tied her hair neatly, and started cleaning one floor after another. For most workers, the office was a place of stress, deadlines, and meetings. For Amina, it was a place of silence and thought. She pushed her cart past the big meeting room. On the whiteboard inside, numbers and charts were still written from a late discussion. Amina paused for a moment, her eyes tracing the complicated figures. She did not understand everything, but some of it felt familiar. She had loved math as a girl, solving puzzles for fun. Her father, a school teacher, once told her, "You have a mind that sees patterns where others see confusion." But life had not been kind. Her father passed away early, and Amina had to stop her studies to support her family. Years later, after marriage and then raising Omar alone, she found work as a janitor. It was not the job of her dreams, but it gave food, rent, and a little hope for tomorrow. Yet, the spark inside her never died. Whenever she saw equations on the office walls, she felt a pull. She sometimes carried a small notebook in her pocket, and when no one was around, she copied the numbers before wiping them clean. That night, she opened her notebook again during a short break. Sitting on her cart, she flipped through pages filled with lines, numbers, and ideas she had scribbled down. Her co-workers never knew. To them, she was only the janitor. The truth was, Amina carried heavy responsibilities. Every morning, she woke up early to make Omar's breakfast and prepare him for school. He was only 10, a cheerful boy who dreamed of becoming a scientist one day. "Mama," he often said, "I want to invent something that will change the world." Amina always smiled and replied, "And you will, my son." She wanted more for him. She wanted him to have chances she never had. But money was always short. Sometimes she skipped meals to make sure Omar had enough. Sometimes she stayed awake worrying about bills. Still, she never showed her sadness in front of him. She told herself, "I will be strong, so he can be strong too." As she cleaned, voices drifted from the floor above. A group of engineers were still working late. Their tones were sharp, worried. Words like loss, deadline, and failure floated down the staircase. Amina paused. She recognized stress in their voices, the same kind of stress she felt when she could not pay rent. She continued mopping, but her mind stayed with the sound. She knew the company was important. She had seen big meetings, expensive suits, and screens full of numbers. But she also saw fear in the faces of workers these past weeks. Something was wrong. After finishing her shift, Amina walked home in the cool night air. The city was alive with traffic and lights, but she felt invisible among the crowd. No one knew the struggles in her heart. No one knew that the woman in the janitor's uniform once dreamed of solving big problems, of standing in front of a board full of equations, explaining answers with confidence. At home, Omar was asleep. She looked at his peaceful face and whispered, "One day, my son, things will change." She sat at the small table in their kitchen and opened her notebook again. The same numbers from the office board filled the first page. She tapped the pen against her chin, thinking. For Amina, math was not just numbers. It was a puzzle, a story waiting to be solved. She believed that every problem had a key, and if she looked hard enough, she could find it. She did not know yet how her small notes, her late-night thoughts, and her quiet courage would soon change her life forever. In the morning, she returned to work with the same quiet smile. The world still saw her as just the janitor. But inside, she carried a secret strength, a sharp mind, and a heart that refused to give up. Her story was only beginning. The morning sun rose over the tall glass tower of the company. Inside, the mood was far from bright. The large meeting room was filled with tired faces, half-empty coffee cups, and stacks of papers. Engineers and managers sat around a table, whispering in worried tones. The company was in trouble, serious trouble. The problem was not small. A single mistake in their biggest project had grown into a $500 million crisis. The project was meant to be a new technology that would bring pride and profit to the company. But now, everything was stuck. Investors were asking questions. Deadlines were missed. If they failed to fix it soon, the future of the company could collapse. At the head of the table sat the CEO, Mr. Rashid. He was usually calm, but today his forehead carried deep lines of stress. His eyes scanned the papers in front of him, yet the numbers gave no comfort. He had spent years building this company. Now it felt like sand slipping through his hands. "We have tried every model," one engineer said, his voice shaking. "But nothing is working." "We need more time," another added. "Time is the one thing we don't have," Mr. Rashid replied firmly. His voice was not angry, but it was heavy with pressure. "We need a solution. Investors want answers, not excuses." The room fell into silence. No one dared to speak further. Each mind was tired, circling the same failed ideas again and again. While this storm brewed upstairs, Amina quietly pushed her cart on the lower floor. She was cleaning the long hallways, polishing glass doors, and wiping desks. To anyone passing by, she was just doing her duty. But Amina's ears were sharp. She caught pieces of conversations whenever she passed near the meeting rooms. She heard words like error, formula, budget cut, and loss. She did not know all the details, but she understood one thing: the company was desperate. The workers were smart, trained, and paid well, yet even they were lost. Later that night, when most people had gone home, Amina entered the main conference room to clean. On the whiteboard, numbers and diagrams filled every space. Complex equations covered the walls like waves of confusion. She stopped in her tracks. Something about the numbers caught her attention. She slowly put down her mop and walked closer. Her eyes scanned the figures. They were not simple, but her mind began to connect patterns. She took a small notebook from her pocket and carefully copied the main lines before erasing them with her cloth. Her heart beat faster. Why was she doing this? She did not know. She was only a janitor, not an engineer. Yet, deep inside, she felt drawn to the puzzle. It was as if the problem was calling her name. That night at home, after putting Omar to sleep, she sat at their small kitchen table. She opened her notebook and studied the copied equations. Her hands moved slowly at first, but then faster, filling the page with lines of numbers. She remembered her father's lessons, his calm voice explaining that every big problem could be broken into smaller parts. Hours passed. The clock ticked into midnight, then 1, then 2. Amina rubbed her tired eyes but kept working. The problem was huge, but she was not afraid. Instead, she felt excitement. She had missed this feeling, the joy of solving puzzles. Meanwhile, in the CEO's office, Mr. Rashid sat alone, staring out at the city lights. His team had no solution. His phone kept buzzing with calls from worried investors. He leaned back in his chair and whispered to himself, "If we don't solve this, everything we built will be gone." The next day, the engineers gathered again. Their faces looked more tired than before. They argued over methods, pointing at charts and screens. The atmosphere was thick with tension. And somewhere in the corner of the building, Amina continued her quiet work. She pushed her cart, wiped the windows, and emptied bins. But in her pocket, the notebook was growing heavier with notes and numbers. No one noticed her. No one thought the janitor had anything to do with their $1 million problem. Yet, piece by piece, she was walking closer to the answer. She did not tell anyone, not even Omar. It was her secret, a small flame she carried in silence. She was afraid of being laughed at. She was afraid of losing her job if someone thought she was wasting time. But deep inside, a new thought began to rise: what if I can actually solve this? The company was falling into darkness. Engineers had failed. Managers had failed. The CEO was losing hope. And in the middle of it all, a single mother in a janitor's uniform was quietly working on the same problem at her kitchen table. She had no fancy office, no expensive computer, no team of assistants. She only had a pen, a notebook, and her unbroken will. And soon, that would be enough. The night was quiet inside the tall office building. Only a few lights glowed in the upper floors, where engineers still worked. On the lower floors, Amina moved silently with her cart, her mop, and her bucket. To anyone watching, she was simply cleaning like always. But inside her mind, something different was happening. She stopped near the big conference room again. On the whiteboard, the same problem was still written, the same set of numbers and diagrams that had troubled the company for weeks. She had copied it the night before, yet tonight, when she looked again, she noticed something new. Amina stepped closer, staring at the equations. Her heart beat faster. Her father's voice echoed in her memory: every problem looks impossible until you break it into smaller pieces. Patterns always reveal themselves. She pulled out her small notebook, flipping through the scribbled pages she had filled in recent nights. Slowly, she began comparing her notes to what was on the board. She took her pen and wrote down a new line. Then another. And another. Her hands moved with more confidence now. What seemed like a wall yesterday was starting to look like a doorway today. The numbers were complicated, yes, but behind them she saw something simple, something almost elegant. She whispered softly to herself, it's not the numbers, it's the way they are placed. After finishing her shift, Amina hurried home. Omar was already asleep, his small blanket pulled up to his chin. She kissed his forehead gently, then sat at the small kitchen table once more. She opened her notebook, spread out the papers, and began working. The clock ticked past midnight. Her tired eyes blinked, but her spirit refused to stop. She drew diagrams on the paper, erased them, then drew again. Each attempt brought her closer to an idea. Finally, after hours of trying, she leaned back in her chair and gasped. A simple adjustment, just one change in the formula, suddenly made the entire problem balance. It was not finished yet, but she felt the spark of a real solution. Her hands shook as she copied the final line again and again, making sure she was not imagining it. It was there, clear and strong. She had found a path no one else seemed to see. Amina looked at the small clock. It was 3 in the morning. She was exhausted, but her heart was alive. She placed her notebook close to her chest and whispered, I think I found it. The next evening, when she returned to work, she passed the same whiteboard. The engineers had added more notes, more confusion. She stood in the empty room for a long moment, staring at their work. Her notebook was in her pocket, and inside it, she carried the spark of hope. Her eyes moved to the markers lying on the table. She hesitated. Should I write my idea here? She thought. What if someone saw it? What if they laughed? What if she got fired for touching things that were not hers? Her hand trembled. She had always been careful to stay invisible. To clean quietly. To never disturb the important people. But tonight, her heart was stronger than her fear. With quiet steps, she picked up the marker and walked to the board. She erased a small part of the equation, then wrote her adjustment. Just a few lines. Simple. Quick. but powerful. She stood back and stared at it. Her chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. It looked so small, yet she knew it could be big, very big. Before leaving the room, she whispered, "If it is right, they will see it. If it is wrong, they will erase it." She put the marker down, picked up her mop, and continued her work as if nothing happened. That night at home, she lay awake beside Omar, staring at the ceiling. She could hardly sleep. Her mind kept asking, what will happen tomorrow? Will they notice? Will they understand? In another part of the city, Mr. Rashid sat in his office again, surrounded by tired engineers. None of them knew that the answer to their $500 million problem had already been written quietly on the board by a woman they never once thought about. The spark of an idea had come alive in the most unexpected place in the heart of a single mother, wearing a janitor's uniform, carrying dreams she never spoke out loud. She was invisible to them. But soon, she would no longer be invisible. Her story was about to change. The morning began like any other inside the tall glass building. Engineers gathered in the main conference room, their eyes heavy with tiredness. The whiteboard stood at the front of the room, still covered with numbers and lines from the night before. But today, something looked different. One of the engineers, a young man named Bilal, frowned as he walked closer. "Wait, who changed this?" he asked, pointing to a small section of the board. The others gathered around. At first, they thought it was just another note one of them had made late at night. But the more they looked, the quieter the room became. This isn't ours," another whispered. Bilal grabbed a marker and quickly tested the adjustment, running calculations on the side. His eyes widened. "No, this works," he said in disbelief. "It actually balances the whole thing." The room filled with sudden energy. Engineers rushed to their laptops, typing fast, checking the formulas against their models. Each result brought the same answer: the problem that had broken their project for weeks was suddenly fixed. "How is this possible?" someone gasped. "We spent nights, and nothing worked." And now, with just a small change, the room buzzed with shock. Relief mixed with confusion. Laughter broke out, not from humor but from pure release of stress. For the first time in weeks, the weight on their shoulders lifted. But then came the question. Who wrote it? Silence fell again. Everyone looked at each other. Heads shook. No one admitted to doing it. Bilal stepped back, his voice serious. "If none of us did this, then who did?" The mystery spread through the building like fire. Managers heard about it. Then directors. Finally, word reached the CEO, Mr. Rashid. He rushed into the conference room, his suit slightly out of place, his expression tense. "What's this I'm hearing? You found a solution?" The engineers nodded. One showed him the board. "Sir, look at this. The adjustment, it solves everything." Mr. Rashid stared at the numbers. At first, he could not believe it. He had seen those equations again and again, always leading to failure. But now, they were perfect. He turned to his team. "Who wrote it?" No one spoke. The silence grew heavier. "Are you telling me a miracle appeared on this board overnight?" the CEO asked. His voice was sharp, but inside, he was stunned. One manager finally suggested, "We should check the cameras. Someone must have come in here." Mr. Rashid agreed. Within an hour, security footage was pulled up. A small group of leaders gathered in a dark room, eyes fixed on the screen. The video showed the empty conference room late at night. Then, a woman entered with a mop and bucket. At first, no one paid attention. But then, she put down her tools, walked to the board, and began to write. Gasps filled the room. "It's the janitor," someone whispered in disbelief. Mr. Rashid leaned closer. The woman on the screen was Amina. She wrote quickly, with certainty, then quietly picked up her mop again and left, as if nothing happened. The room was silent. Every leader was stunned. A janitor had solved the company's biggest problem, the one their experts could not fix with millions of dollars and endless nights of work. Mr. Rashid's eyes narrowed, but not in anger. In his chest, something new was stirring, a mix of curiosity, respect, and disbelief. He turned to his managers. "Bring her to me." Downstairs, Amina was pushing her cart, cleaning the marble floor. She felt normal, invisible, as she always did. But soon, two men approached her politely. "Amina, the CEO would like to see you." Her heart stopped. She looked at them in shock. Had she done something wrong? Did they discover her notes on the board? Fear rushed through her veins. She needed this job to take care of Omar. She could not afford to lose it. Slowly, with nervous steps, she followed them to the top floor. The elevator doors opened, revealing the CEO's office, a place she had never been before. It was large, with wide windows looking over the city. Mr. Rashid stood there, waiting. Amina lowered her head and whispered, "Sir, I am sorry if I did something wrong." "I only wanted to," but Mr. Rashid raised his hand gently to stop her. His voice was calm but filled with wonder. "Amina, I just want to ask you one question. How did you solve what my best engineers could not?" She froze. The moment she feared had come. Yet instead of anger, she saw respect in his eyes. The truth could no longer stay hidden. Her quiet life was about to change forever. Amina stood inside the CEO's office, her hands trembling as she held them together. She had never been in such a place before. The wide glass windows showed the whole city below, the walls were lined with awards, and the desk was polished like a mirror. Everything here felt far away from her world of mops and buckets. Mr. Rashid looked at her carefully, not with anger, but with curiosity. He gestured for her to sit. "Please, Amina. Don't be afraid. I only want to understand." She sat slowly on the edge of the chair, her eyes lowered. "Sir, I am sorry. I should not have touched the board. I only wanted to try. I thought maybe it could help, but I know it was not my place." Her words came out soft, almost breaking. She expected him to be upset, maybe even fire her. But instead, Mr. Rashid leaned forward, his tone calm. "You solved a problem that has cost this company millions. My engineers worked for weeks, and none of them found this answer. How did you do it?" Amina hesitated. For a long moment, she was silent. Then she took a deep breath and spoke. "When I was young, I loved numbers. My father was a teacher. He used to tell me that numbers are like friends, you only need to listen, and they will show you the way. I dreamed of studying, of becoming a teacher like him, maybe even an engineer one day." Her voice grew softer. "But life was different. My father passed away early. I had to work instead of study. Later, after marriage, I raised my son alone. Cleaning was the only work I could find to give him food and shelter." She looked down at her hands. "But I never forgot what my father taught me. Whenever I see numbers, I cannot stop myself from thinking. At night, when the building is quiet, I copy the equations before cleaning them. I try them at home. It makes me feel alive." The room was silent. Mr. Rashid listened carefully, his expression thoughtful. Behind him, two managers shifted uncomfortably, unsure of what to say. Finally, the CEO spoke again. "So you solved it because you never stopped believing in yourself?" Amina shook her head. "No, sir. I solved it because I never stopped trying. Even when no one saw me, even when people thought I was only a janitor, I kept learning in my own way." Her eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. I wanted to show my son that giving up is never the answer. For a moment, Mr. Rashid said nothing. His eyes softened. He saw not just a janitor, but a mother, a fighter, a mind too bright to be hidden. He leaned back in his chair and smiled faintly. Do you realize what you have done, Amina? You saved this company. You gave us a solution that no one else could see. This is not a small thing. Her heart pounded. She never thought her small idea could mean so much. I only wanted to help, she whispered. And you did more than help, Mr. Rashid said firmly. You showed us that true talent can be anywhere. Even where people least expect it. The managers exchanged looks of surprise. They had walked past Amina many times, never once thinking she carried such ability. Now they felt ashamed for not noticing her before. Amina sat quietly, unsure what would happen next. She still feared losing her job. She thought maybe they would thank her politely and then ask her never to interfere again. But Mr. Rashid had something different in mind. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the shining city. Amina, this company needs people like you. Not just for cleaning, but for creating, for solving, for building the future. He turned back to her with steady eyes. I want you to join our research team. Her breath caught. Me? But I am not trained. I never studied like your engineers. I don't belong there. Mr. Rashid smiled gently. You belong where your mind belongs. And your mind belongs here. We can train you. We can guide you. But the gift you carry, that is something no school can give. Tears welled in Amina's eyes. She thought of Omar, of the nights she had worked with tired hands and worried heart. She thought of her father's words about patterns and courage. And now, here was the CEO himself, offering her a chance she had buried in her heart long ago. Thank you, sir, she whispered, her voice shaking. Thank you. Mr. Rashid nodded. No, Amina. Thank you for reminding us that greatness can shine from anywhere. As she left his office, her steps felt lighter than ever before. She was still the same woman, still a mother, still a worker. But now, she carried something new, respect, recognition, and hope for a future that finally looked brighter. And though the company did not know it yet, this was only the beginning of her true journey. The next morning, whispers filled the entire building. News traveled quickly, the janitor had solved the company's greatest problem. At first, many did not believe it. Some laughed and said it was impossible. Others shook their heads, thinking it was just a rumor. But by afternoon, no one doubted it anymore. The story was confirmed. The solution was real. And the name behind it was not an engineer, not a director, but Amina, the quiet janitor everyone had walked past without noticing. Employees gathered in small groups, their voices low with shock. How could she see what none of us did? One asked. We studied for years, we worked day and night, but she found the answer in seconds. Some felt embarrassed. Some felt respect. But all of them were curious. Who was this woman they had ignored all along? Meanwhile, Amina arrived for her evening shift as usual. She carried her mop, her bucket, and her notebook hidden in her bag. But this time, people's eyes followed her. Workers who never noticed her before now moved aside to greet her politely. Some smiled, some nodded, but all of them looked at her differently. Amina felt shy. She had never wanted attention. All she wanted was to do her job quietly and care for her son Omar. But she could not hide anymore. The world inside the company had changed, and she was at the center of it. That evening, she was asked to meet Mr. Rashid again. Nervous but hopeful, she walked to his office. This time, when the elevator doors opened, she was not led by guards or assistants. She was welcomed like a guest of honor. Inside, the CEO stood with several top managers. His face carried a rare smile. "Amina," he said warmly, "today is a special day for this company. And it is because of you." She lowered her head. "Sir, I am only a janitor. I don't deserve all this." But Mr. Rashid shook his head. "You are not only a janitor. You are a thinker, a problem solver, and an inspiration. Last night, our investors tested your solution. It worked. It saved us hundreds of millions. And more than that, it saved our future." Gasps filled the room. Amina raised her eyes slowly, surprised. She had not known how big the impact truly was. Mr. Rashid continued, "For this reason, I am promoting you. From today, you are no longer part of the cleaning staff. You will join our research team, with full training and full salary. You will have your own desk, your own computer, and a chance to grow." Tears filled Amina's eyes. She pressed her hands together tightly. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Say nothing," the CEO replied kindly. "Just accept what you have earned." The managers clapped politely, some with genuine joy, some with quiet disbelief. But one thing was clear: Amina's life had changed. When she left the office that night, her heart was full. She thought of Omar. For years, she had worried about his future. Now, she had something better to give him: hope, stability, and pride. The next day, the company held a special meeting. Hundreds of employees filled the hall. Whispers filled the air until Mr. Rashid walked on stage. He raised his hand for silence. "Today," he said in a strong voice, "we celebrate not only a solution to our biggest challenge but also the person who gave it to us. She is someone many of us overlooked. Someone who worked late at night, unseen, unrecognized. Yet when the moment came, she gave us the key we needed." The room was silent, waiting. Then the CEO smiled. "Please welcome Amina." Gasps spread through the crowd as Amina walked shyly onto the stage. She wore her simple uniform, but her steps were steady. The employees stood, clapping loudly. Some even cheered. The sound filled the hall, and Amina's eyes shone with tears. She looked at the sea of faces that once ignored her, now filled with respect. She felt nervous, but also strong. She bowed her head slightly and whispered into the microphone, "I am only one person. But I want to tell you all something my father once told me: every mind is valuable. Never think someone is too small to make a difference." The clapping grew louder. People rose to their feet. A standing ovation filled the hall. For the first time in her life, Amina felt seen. Truly seen. That night, when she returned home, Omar ran to her with wide eyes. "Mama, they talked about you on the news. My teacher told the class you are a hero." Amina hugged him tightly, tears running down her cheeks. "I did it for you, Omar. For us. And now, our life will be better." The boy smiled proudly. "I always knew you were the smartest, Mama." Amina laughed through her tears. She was no longer the invisible janitor. She was a mother, a dreamer, and now, a recognized problem solver. Her journey was far from over, but for the first time, the road ahead was bright. The company building had never felt so alive. Days after Amina's discovery, the atmosphere was completely different. Workers walked with energy, meetings were filled with hope, and even the investors began smiling again. The fear of failure was gone, replaced by excitement for the future. But the biggest change of all was not in the company's projects. It was in the way everyone now looked at Amina. No longer did people walk past her without noticing. No longer was she invisible. When she walked through the halls, employees greeted her with respect. Some asked her for advice, others simply smiled and said, "Good morning, Amina." Small gestures, but each one filled her heart with warmth. For years she had been in the background, unseen. Now she stood in the center of the company's story. Mr. Rashid made sure of that. One afternoon, he gathered the entire staff again in the main hall. On the large screen behind him, the company's new project was displayed: strong, successful, saved by a single solution. Today, he said, his voice steady, we remember an important lesson. Our company was saved not by a machine, not by a program, not even by years of experience. It was saved by the courage and mind of someone we all overlooked. He looked at Amina, who stood quietly at the side of the stage. Let her story remind us that talent can shine from anywhere. We must never ignore the value of a person, no matter what role they play. The hall filled with applause once more. Some clapped because of respect, others because of inspiration. But all of them understood, the company would never forget Amina's name again. From that day forward, her life truly began to change. She was given a desk in the research department. At first, she felt out of place surrounded by engineers with degrees, fancy words, and years of training. She wore her simple clothes, carried her notebook, and sat quietly, wondering if she belonged. But soon, her actions answered the question. Whenever a new challenge appeared, Amina listened carefully, her pen moving quickly across her notebook. While others argued loudly, she searched for patterns in silence. Sometimes she surprised even herself by finding answers hidden in the noise. Slowly, her co-workers realized she was not just lucky. She was gifted. At night, when she returned home, Omar greeted her with a wide smile. Their small apartment now felt brighter. She could finally buy better food, pay bills on time, and even save a little for Omar's future. But more than money, what mattered most to Amina was the pride in her son's eyes. One evening, Omar hugged her tightly and said, "Mama, you are my hero." Tears filled her eyes. "No, Omar," she whispered, "you are my reason." News of her story spread beyond the company. A local newspaper wrote about the janitor who solved $1 million problem. Soon, television channels wanted to interview her. People in the city recognized her on the street. Some even stopped her to say, "You gave us hope." "Thank you." At first, the attention frightened her. She had lived so long in silence that she did not know how to stand in the light. But slowly, she learned. She spoke with honesty, with humility, and with courage. She told everyone the same message: never underestimate yourself. And never underestimate others. Greatness can come from anywhere, even from those who seem invisible. Her words touched many hearts. Some young students were inspired to study harder. Some workers found new pride in their jobs. Even other single mothers wrote letters to her, saying she gave them strength. Amina read each letter carefully, her eyes often filling with tears. She had never thought her simple act of solving a problem could reach so many lives. But perhaps the greatest moment came months later, when the company launched its new product, saved by her solution. The hall was filled with reporters, cameras, and employees. Mr. Rashid stood proudly on stage and invited Amina to stand beside him. "This success," he said, "belongs to all of us. But it began with one woman, one mind, one act of courage." Amina showed us that true value is not in titles or uniforms, but in the heart and determination of a person. The hall erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. And Amina, though shy, stood tall. She was no longer the janitor cleaning in the dark. She was now a voice, a symbol, an inspiration. That night, when she returned home, Omar sat beside her on the balcony. The city lights sparkled before them. "Mama," he said softly, "when I grow up, I want to be just like you." Amina smiled, brushing his hair gently. "No, Omar. Be better than me. Go further. Because every step you take forward makes the world brighter." He leaned against her shoulder, and together they looked at the stars. Her journey was not over. There would be more struggles, more challenges, more late nights of work. But Amina was ready. She had faced invisibility, hardship, and doubt. Now she carried courage, respect, and love. And with those, she could face anything. The janitor who once walked quietly with her mop and bucket had become a light not only for her son, not only for her company, but for everyone who heard her story. Her new beginning had just begun.